Really, we want to provide some detail and some depth into the outstanding warrant situation in Albuquerque. Of course, this is relevant every day in our city for crime fighting and for our criminal justice system, but this is also very relevant as we're advocating up in the legislature for our top priority, which is a warrant apprehension or serving fund that we're going to do in coordination with the other agencies involved in the criminal justice system, and also hopefully this can be mirrored statewide. So as our legislators hash through that and we work with our partners on the details, we know we got a lot of questions about, well, what's actually in the warrant backlog, what would the plan be, and so forth, and that's what we're going to work on and share with you a little bit about today. Now, first, I want to emphasize that this all came out of our Metro Crime Initiative and is certainly in the spirit of that program, which is essentially based on the following logic. It's focused on, number one, what can we do today? It is a short-term focused set of initiatives. There are many things we can do long-term to prevent this backlog from ever happening, and we acknowledge that. But the Metro Crime Initiative is about literally what can we do today in the short term to bring down crime, and this is by far the number one thing we can do today. And the other aspect of the Metro Crime Initiative is that each piece of the criminal justice system has to acknowledge their challenge and their opportunity to fix what is broken about the criminal justice system. And so for us, that means acknowledging the role that the courts play, that we have to fund them properly, whether it's the jails or the DA or anything in between. Every piece of the criminal justice system has a role to play in both this warrant initiative, but also in the Metro Crime Initiative. Now, what we're going to go over today is essentially, in general, there are 5,000 outstanding warrants in our city today. We've shared that with you, and these are felony warrants. So let me repeat that. There are 5,000 felony warrants, roughly, in our city today that are outstanding. It is also true that there are 62,000 misdemeanor warrants. This initiative is not about those. This is not about one-off roundups for low-level crimes in any way. This is only about trying to get violent felons off our street. That's what this is focused on. And we're sharing with you today how we're able to narrow those 5,000 outstanding felony warrants to roughly 800 folks that we believe are the primary drivers of crime in our community. Now, because of group activity and gang association, this is typically seen in other cities as well, where there are a smaller number of individuals who are driving the largest amount of crime. So I do just want to let you know that this is in step with policy that we've been working on with our violence intervention program and also with the John Jay School of Criminal Justice. This is something we started a couple of years ago that we also got some funding from the state for. And this essentially is part of delivering on that policy and on that program on the criminal justice side. Now, I'm going to close my remarks by highlighting something that I think should be fairly straightforward, but it's something that's important to remind people. Number one, that getting violent criminals off our street is something we control. We can actually do something about that as whether it's the city or the county or the criminal justice system. Right? It's very difficult to prevent a homicide from happening. You know, if only we had an officer everywhere, every time we needed them, right before a crime happened. Right? That's the dream that will never happen. But what we can control is getting these folks off the street and making sure that they are part of an effective criminal justice system, which is what we don't have right now, but this will help force that issue. And so for us, we know that while we can't prevent homicides, the best thing we can do is to get those likely to commit them off the street. We actually can control that, but we need help. Right now, if you think of what it takes for roughly 800 warrants to be served, we'll walk through the math on how that gets to our legislative ask. But right now, APD can't do this by themselves. Neither can any law enforcement agency in the state. It takes two things: us to coordinate our teams together when they're available for overtime, and then funding for that overtime. And that's exactly what we're asking the legislature for. So with that, I'll hand it over to Chief Medina. Chief?
Thank you, Mayor. This backlog is our top priority. These individuals we're looking to get first are violent repeat offenders who are the drivers of crime. And we want to reduce homicides. And like the mayor stated, We know that we are not going to eliminate homicides. It's very difficult for us to prevent homicides. We simply don't have an officer to send to every single party that's occurring within the city or every single event, and we can't always have a cop on every single corner. But we know that taking repeat offenders with a violent history into custody will impact those violent crime numbers. And, you know, people may ask historically how we got here. You know, this is the first administration that is going to fully tackle this problem. In 1997, I was a young, brand new patrol officer, and I remember working warrant operations to reduce the backlog of warrants. It was funded by the Metro courts back in 1997-98 timeframe, and we were given packets, and we went out and we did sweeps. And the different thing is we're focusing on the right people. I remember getting warrants of individuals who hadn't paid their dog fines, parking violations. And this isn't about those types of warrants. This is about looking at the drivers of crime. As we hope to fund the overtime needs for this backlog, we're already working on a weekly basis to target the right individuals and make the right arrests. And why will this work is one question. And I think that this is the first time we're going to see 5 years of work come into play and a process that we've been building on in the last 5 years. This isn't just about arresting individuals. This is about using our SHIELD unit that we created in 2018 and having them build the strongest cases for the district attorney's office so that we hopefully increase our ability to detain some of these individuals. This is about using the Real-Time Crime Center, which has been built for the last 5 years, an investment of over $50 million, to ensure that we're targeting the right people and that we're getting the right intel to our detectives who are looking for these people and trying to apprehend them, and to make sure that we're able to put that information and those packets out to every single agency like the U.S. Marshals, the Bernalillo County Sheriff's Department, and the New Mexico State Police who are assisting us in apprehending some of these individuals. We can't do this alone, and we've laid a great foundation over the past 5 years in ensuring that we have all the technology, all the processes in place to really fight crime and to keep individuals in custody and to find individuals who are outstanding. Deputy Chief Barker is going to talk a little bit about the specifics of the operations, how this is all going to work. And I realize that one thing with warrants is I'm sure we're going to get phone calls. There are individuals here who may be in jail somewhere else, but notifying us and letting us know to get the wheels of justice going is important, because obviously that goes to show how sometimes not all the pieces of the system talk together. So we know that we will continue to look for these individuals. We know that taking them into custody is going to affect crime, particularly violent crime, but we also know it'll have effect on other types of crime, because these individuals generally are involved in crime across the board, but we're focusing on them because of their ability to impact violent crime. So thank you.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Cecily Barker, and I'm the Deputy Chief of the Investigative Bureau with the Albuquerque Police Department. The backlog of warrants may seem like a daunting task. However, we have an incredible team who is dedicated to working on this, and we've come up with a solid and concise plan to clear the backlog. I also would like to thank our law enforcement partners at Bernalillo County Sheriff's Office and the U.S. Marshal Service, and that thanks also goes out to the District Attorney's Office and the courts who have been working closely with us as this affects the entire criminal justice system. As you can see here in these pictures, we have visuals that put faces to the backlog. These are merely 25 individuals from the list of 800 warrants that we are starting with. All of these individuals are drivers of crime within our community. Specifically, Christian Wood is an individual who, before the weekend of the 21st, when he shot at officers stealing a city-owned bait car and had over 10 felony warrants for his arrest. This Crime Stoppers bulletin was issued for him that day when he fired at our officers, and we're still looking for him. Our command staff has taken an in-depth look at the thousands of outstanding felony warrants and will first start with 800 of the most violent and recent offenders. For example, we're looking at individuals who are wanted for homicide, armed robbery, kidnapping, aggravated assault, just to name a few. As the list of warrants is extensive, dating back numerous years, as Chief stated, our investigators know that some of these individuals may be deceased or no longer in the metro area. Some of these individuals who have warrants that are years old and potentially have not recently reoffended will be tackled at a later time. We will have 16 investigative teams within our department to include our proactive response team, our impact and investigative services units who will access and review warrants on a bi-weekly basis to see if any modifications need to be made. Each team will work one case a week, which will lead to over 800 warrants within a year. We recognize the impact that this will have on the detention center, and that's why we will focus on 16 warrants a week. The department has also been in frequent discussions with the courts and the jail to plan surrender days, providing individuals with outstanding warrants and an option to turn themselves in. Thank you.
Thanks so much, DC Barker. We're going to be able to take some questions about this, but I did want to close with a couple of additional thoughts. And the first part is around, one example, just to be clear, the shooter, one of the shooters at elected officials' houses was out on warrant. That shooter literally, by definition, should not have been on our streets. This is exactly the kind of issue that is happening dozens of times in our city, each and every week. Now, we can walk through the different situations for other individuals who are shared here, but I also want to emphasize that this is a part of a systematic effort as we go through this in the legislature to be able to do this in the best way possible. So we're working with actually the Public Defender's Office on ideas that they have with respect to how people voluntarily might come in. These are individuals who are probably not part of these 800, but they're part of that other 5,000 who simply just need to show up to court. And they might need to figure out how exactly they can do that or what works best for them. But nonetheless, they're getting back into a criminal justice system that is actually able to process warrants as it should. We're working with the courts in terms of the additional funding that they might need to process some of these cases. We're also including discussions with the DA's office, of course, on contracted attorneys and how that might help. And we're also in discussions with the county in terms of the jail and the additional resources they might need as we coordinate how these folks may or may not be part of the corrections system. So these are all aspects of the legislative initiative, but today we really want to focus on sort of what is inside this specifically for the Albuquerque area. And so let me just check, did we have another speaker lined up or no? Okay. Chief, do you want to add anything else?
No, I just want to add really quickly, if you look at some of these individuals, one of them just recently was in the media. We had 2 weeks ago, we had officers shot at. The mayor talked about some of our elected officials being shot at. We literally had officers also shot at with somebody who had 11 outstanding felony warrants. These are individuals that need to be taken into custody. Some of those warrants were a couple years old, the vast majority, but they still hadn't been served. So, and he hadn't been able to be located. So we are looking for Mr. Wood there. So if any of you guys can get that out, we would like to take him into custody as safely as possible, given the severe violent nature of the crimes that he committed.
Okay, Rebecca.
Anybody have questions? So my questions are, typically the officer shortage is what kind of causes these backlogs. So how will you free up the resources for this?
I think the mayor and I started putting this in motion actually to free up resources a while back. We used to have officers that sat at Home Depot, at Walmart, at a lot of different locations, and I quickly realized that overtime that would impact the safety of the citizens of Albuquerque wasn't being taken because individuals were taking these cush assignments just parked outside of a retail store. We've cut all those overtimes, and we'll continue to cut the types of overtime that don't need to be done by an Albuquerque police officer in order to ensure that we get some of our overtime passed up. And our investigative units, they already sometimes have to stay over. And sometimes for budgetary reasons, they don't work as many hours as they can to honor overtime, but they have the ability also to work more hours, and they're consistently looking. So there's a variety of things that are going to be occurring in order for us to make sure our officers are able to go out and look for these individuals.
And my other question is, provides money for fiscal year '24. Is this allocation for just that year enough, or will this backlog take more time to address?
What we've estimated is essentially what this will cost to get the backlog down and essentially focus on 800 warrants out of the 5,000. Now, we want this fund, as you'll see in the legislature, the idea is it would be a fund that we would draw down or be reimbursed for. So in some ways, it actually creates a setup where, look, if we're actively serving these and that fund is depleted, you know, we may or may not ask for it to be replenished. But also, if it's taking longer than we think, then you know that fund could be available for future years. And we are looking basically at treating this the same way as we did the recruiting fund, which is the same way, and that's worked out well. So for us, hopefully we'll be able to use it all in a year and get these 800 warrants served. But if not, we'll continue to use it, and if we need more, we'll certainly ask for it.
You know, and I think one thing to add to that is it's important that we develop systems and we have partnerships, and we have the best partnerships we've had in years with the police department. This is the first time we sit with the courts, that we sit with the prosecutors, we sit with the public defenders. And the goal is to get this information out quicker, and even now the courts report to us. A year ago we talked about how we didn't know when individuals were had violated their GPS or ankle bracelets during being held for detention. Now we know when they weren't held for detention. Now we know because they report to us these violations. So this is about speeding up the notification to the department, increasing our ability to communicate better and get this information to our officers faster and more quickly work on a backlog before it turns into a backlog. And one of the things we're going to be doing is we're taking a sample of these warrants that are coming in, and we realize it's the 800 plus the new ones that are coming in that we're going to be working on.
Chief, can you clarify how you, found those 800 out of the 5,000?
Here, what's that DC?
Yes.
Absolutely. So taking a look at the warrant backlog, like we stated, we're going to focus on 800, and we have 16 teams. Now, if those 16 teams are each assigned one warrant a week, knowing that if we go after an individual, they likely have more than one warrant, we know that that will put us at or over 800 warrants for the year. So our teams will specifically focus on those. Again, it's going to be the drivers of crime and individuals with the most recent warrants. For those who have the older warrants or property crime that are not violent, we're looking for those to be self-surrender, for individuals to turn themselves in.
And those teams, how many are on them, and is the one warrant per week, is that like in addition to their other duties?
It will be in addition to their other duties. So we have our proactive response teams, which are within the area commands, and the amount of officers within those teams varies. We also have our investigative services division, which includes our auto theft team, our gun violence teams, our investigative support unit, which will be the team responsible for going after the most violent offenders.
Become wanted on another warrant in a few days.
Right. We're hoping the communication that we now have with both our federal partners, Bernalillo County, the District Attorney's Office, and Metro Court, that we're going to see these individuals be held responsible and accountable for their crimes. Our teams are well aware of who these individuals are, and we're going to continue to work with them if they want services, and if they don't, and they get back out, we will once again arrest them.
Thank you.